what I do, hopefully you can see where I am cutting, is I have the template lined up, or my ruler lined up with the solid bold line of the paper piece. So this one is going to require just a little bit more thinking, just because of that I want to join these, because I want to have less sewing. Alright, so this is the one that I want to join together. So I will cut this one and then give you the next example. So what you can see is that I'm trimming off all of the FPP seam allowances because I'm not going to use them. All I need is just this little piece. All right, where did my so I didn't quite think through all the colors that I want to use. So I know that this one is going to be the hexagon, and I know that it is going to go in a dark area. I was going to use this beautiful lightning bug, but I think it's going to be a little bit too busy for the background. So I think I'm going to use this. I think that'll be, this is a gradient quilt, so I don't want too much of contrast. If I can spit out the words. Okay, so I'm looking for just this little bit because this is going to be my background fabric. And I kind of do want to pay attention to this one. Generally I don't. And it's okay if you have, generally it's okay to not pay a lot of attention, but I feel like I need to maybe pay a little bit more attention because I'm showing you how to do this, rather than just being inside of my head. So normally what I would do is I would cut out all of my background pieces and then I would arrange them. So I would put another one right here, then I would cut and cut here. But for the sake of this video, pardon my elephants running down the stairs. Okay, so we have this here, and I'm using this Creative Grids ruler, and so this is a 1/4 inch to this dotted line, and then I know that these ones are 3/8. I really like using a 3/8 seam allowance, and you don't have to be really exact. So I kind of, you can see that it's not really exactly 3/8, kind of an eyeball, and that's it. That's all you'll do for that. Sometimes I like to trim off the tails a little bit so I don't have a whole lot of extra. So then I use school glue. I buy these when they're on sale because they're so much cheaper. I think I try to get them when they're about 4 for $1. I like this one better than the purple Elmer's. This one just glues a lot better, I think. And also be careful, especially in Colorado, since the air is so dry, that the sticks dry out a lot faster. So sometimes if I have a whole bunch, I'll set it on my lap desk. I can listen to TV and glue these down as well. So there's not really a lot of science that goes into this. It's very artistic. So with triangles, though, a secret, I actually have a couple tips is what I'm trying to say, tips for triangles, is I glue the long end down first, most of the time, but I keep in mind where my seam and my outside seam is. So the reason I chose it this way is because the long end is going to attach here. Maybe this is a better one to show. The long end will attach here, and this will be my outside seam. I'm grabbing a block so you can see. So like this is the inside seam, and then this would be the outside. Because this is going to be inside of quilting on top, this part doesn't matter. I just want to make sure that I lift it because the way I'm constructing this one is a quilt as you go. So I need to make sure that I have the seam allowance. I have enough room. That's why I use a larger seam allowance than a 1/4 of an inch So then I make sure that I have enough room over here. And so I kind of try to keep in mind if this is an outside outside triangle or an inside triangle. If it's an inside triangle, it doesn't really matter. So then I would take the next piece, or the next little leg, and a lot of videos will say use less glue, and I kind of wonder if it's because they are at sea level, or they have a lot of moisture. That's maybe what I mean more. A lot of moisture in the air, and I notice that as these dry out, I need more glue. And I try to rotate the glue so that I have a little bit of a pointy end. So then what I'm going to do is I am going to take this right here on that seam allowance. I'm going to be a little bit fed. These are going to be on the outside, so I just want the hexagons on the inside and then the half hexagon on the outside, just because I want less pieces. And normally I would press this, however, I can't have my iron and my space heater running at the same time. And right now the priority is the space heater. So this is one that I will do on top because it is symmetrical. If it is asymmetrical, then that's one that you do want to pay attention to. And you can see that it's not quite exact. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yep. You can see that it's not super exact, and that's okay. All I am looking for is I just need to cut the shape out right now. The other thing that I could do is, maybe I will do this. That'll give me a little bit more. Unless I'm fussy cutting, which I really do love fussy cutting, but this one isn't one that, maybe for the center ones, I might fussy cut those. And if you aren't familiar with that, it means that you're cutting out a particular design, and that's why I have all these other tape marks. Oops, you can't see that. All right. So still, because these are symmetrical, I'm not super worried about it being cut on the top of the fabric as opposed to the bottom of the fabric. But for the last triangle, I was more concerned. So where I'm going to measure this up is with this line here on that raw edge, and then I will cut it here, and I just want to make sure that I'm going to have roughly between 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch between the two. For the seam allowance, if that made sense. I hope it did. Alright, and for the sake of demonstration, I'm only going to do just this one, so then I can show you how they match up. Sometimes for these larger pieces, I will put just a little bit of glue. I have heard that some people have a hard time with the glue showing through. I would imagine, especially if it's if the glue has been sitting for a longer period of time, that would probably be true. Okay, so for this one, what I'm going to choose to do is start with a shorter end. I have to remember to share my secrets about triangles. Okay, so then what I do is I just work my way around. And the advantage to doing it this way is you are alternating where the tails go, so then they'll nest really nicely on the back side. Sometimes they work out really well and sometimes they don't, but basically, like, these ones nested really, really nicely. And then not all of them do, but you want it to be as flat as possible. This one is a little bit bunchy, but sometimes seams just like to go wherever they want to go. Okay. Oops. So I use Aurifil 50 weight thread. I think this is cotton. Some people really like to match their thread to their piece, and I have tried it a few different ways. I like to kind of match. So I think with this one I used a cream thread, and you can see it on the back, but you can't really see it as much on the front. And then once it is quilted, you really won't see it. This one I used gray thread, and you just can't see what color I used for the piecing. I kind of like things that blend in a little bit more, but also stand out a little bit. So I wouldn't be too terribly concerned about the color of thread unless you're using white on something really dark. So I chose this purple to go with all of the darks. I have some blues, and the purple has blended really, really nice. Then I've used kind of this oystery yellow. I've also used gray. Just kind of depends on what I grab for those ones. And I found that this one was really nice for just the darker colors. So anyhow, then I have these just little teeny tiny clips, and I like to clip down the opposite edge. So it's always a good idea to look at, okay, how is this going to go? Did I do the right one? And moving them around a little bit so that you get the right layout. Now these are going to be a little bit tricky because these tails are not going to nestle right now, but these are going to come out. This edge and this edge is going to be right here. So I want these to come out. So I'm taking a look at where these line up here. And hopefully you can see, maybe not, that I want these to match up really exactly. And the great thing about this is if you have extra, you can just bend the piece and ease in the extra part that you need. Luckily, these look like they match really, really well. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread, and I have found that working with slightly shorter pieces of thread works better. And these are John James Milner's needles, size 11. And the eye is actually a really nice size. I don't have too much problem with these ones. I really caution against using the Dritz. I did not like those at all. I broke a whole bunch. Ouch. And then I stabbed myself. So I've just created kind of a French knot at the end, and accidentally I got both of the pieces of thread. Okay. Alright, so then what I'm going to do is I like to take a look at whichever side is going to be easier to go in. So you want to go up through this seam on the back side and as close to the point as you can. And here's the point. Okay, so then the knot is in there. I feel like it could move up a little bit higher. So then what I'm going to do, because these aren't, see, I'm going to have to ease it just a little bit, is I'm going to tell this where I want it to go. I'm going to move the pieces so the corners match up, because I want my corners to match really, really well. So I'm going to be sewing along this seam right here. I think I need a piece of white paper below this so you can see. Is that a little bit better? So I'm going to be sewing along this seam here. So I get the first in, and I like to use my finger to keep the thread from knotting up too much, because just the friction will cause it to knot. Okay, so I've already had one stitch, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lock the stitch, and there are a few different ways to do it, but what I do is I just make a loop and then go back through it. So this is where the fun part is, and hopefully you can see this. All I'm doing is taking two teeny tiny stitches, or 2 pieces of thread in the fabric, and each stitch is about 1/8 of an inch from the last one. So what happens if you take less than 2 stitches or less than 2 pieces of fabric is that you are going to cause the fabric to pull instead of really grabbing those pieces. If you grab more, then what happens is you're going to be able to see what is on the other, or you'll be able to see the thread, and the seam will be much, much bulkier. Okay, so then what happens as you get closer down to this end, I usually wait until I'm right here by the seam allowance right here. What I do is I pull this end. Now if you were piecing all of your pieces together, you would not do this, but because I'm going to be machine piecing these together, I do need that seam allowance. And I have had a few times where it has gotten tucked in, like right here. And so I'll just make sure that I really do stitch that down really well. But this is what I have found helps, especially for when I'm going to be machine piecing. So the glue is still wet for me. Usually this doesn't happen, so you need to leave this paper in until you're all done, or it's just more satisfying to wait until you're all done. Okay, so then what I would do is I would go all the way up to, come on, focus, up to this corner right here, okay? Then I would fold it open, because this piece is going to go here, let's say, and then I would piece along here. Or if this is the end of this, I would also pull up this end to make sure that I don't catch it. Then I would just tie that off. But if I have a piece that comes up that's supposed to be here, I just continue with that same piece of thread, and then I just go to the next place. So this is my triangle trick, and I've already told you how I do the triangles. Let me show you another one. Let's say that you have a triangle that is more like this, and it's an inside piece. I always start with the same one, so I take my triangle pieces and I have them face the long end toward me with my fabric underneath, and I start on the left hand side because I'm a lefty. I fold over this one, then I do the bottom, so I'm always rotating to the left. If you're ready, then you go to the right, or however you choose. Go this way, fold it over. Oops. So I've done these two, right? And then we get to this one and fold that one over as well. But this is more for the inside pieces. For the outside pieces, sometimes I really try to pay attention, and then sometimes I don't. I just notice that my seams lay a lot flatter if I can do it the first way. So I have 2 different ways for triangles. So I hope all of this really helps. I just love English paper piecing because it takes all of the trickiness out of Y seams out, and it just makes piecing so enjoyable, so easy. I can sit and do just about anything. Anyway, I can, do it while we're traveling or any of that. What was the other thing that I was going to say? Oh, the only other trick that I have is for when you have 2 half square triangles. I try to put those together first before attaching the next piece, and I do that on a long end. So I'd start on one end, go to the next one, so then I go down this way, right? And then I attach my next half square triangle to this one. It just makes them a lot neater than if I do these 2 first and then go back to do this one. Sometimes I will cut my thread so that I have little squares. I just really like when the corners meet really nice and crisply. And then the other advantage to a 3/8 inch or larger seam allowance is that when I trim this, I can make sure that it trims to exactly the right size that I want it to be. It's not going to be too small. And then again, I try to really make sure that I pay attention to my seams with my corners. So when I measure it, because these need to be 6.5 inches cut is I look on either side for my 1/4 inch, and then I line those up. But you don't necessarily need this. You probably don't even need a rotary tool. I just find that it's a lot easier and quicker to do it that way rather than cutting. So let me know if you have any questions. I hope you love English paper piecing as much as I do. It just makes everything so nice and easy. I just put everything in a little plastic baggie, and I'll put a picture of the block in there, so then I can just make it as mindless as possible.